Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's BBQ Joints, and this one's a really good one. It's with RJ Hinkle. He's a photographer. In the title of this interview, I put BBQ Photographer, but he's so much more, just like every other photographer. Barbecue is just a passion and a component of his entire catalog of things that he likes to photograph and that he does for a living. And he is a big time photographer. I reached out to him and I've been following him for a long time. I think in 2014, Daniel Vaughn at Texas Monthly wrote a little blurb about him, and that's how I started to kind of pay attention to what he was doing. And then when I did a list of what photographers and barbecue photographers use, I reached out and we became friends, and I'm so glad because you're going to really enjoy this. It gets into the weeds. It's important if you're interested in photography because I think you'll get a lot out of this, but also too if you're just interested in people who are passionate about their craft and passionate about people in general and the people that are really passionate about their craft. I know you're going to love this. He's a fervent lover of Texas and its barbecue joints as well. So can't thank RJ enough for taking the time. Oh, and it's interesting because I wanted to know what his first camera was, and it involves bazooka gum. So I think you'll find that kind of intriguing. But I can't thank him enough for taking the time. I know you guys are going to really enjoy this. I'll put all of us links to everything below, as well as if you're listening to this on the podcast side, jump over to the YouTube side. I have a montage at the beginning of a number of his photos that are barbecue photos, and they're just gorgeous. He actually has one of my favorite photos of someone in particular, but he has a lot of my favorite photos as I've gone through them. I'm like, oh, that's my favorite, that's my favorite. And the Kevin's Barbecue Joints podcast and YouTube show is brought to you by Syntex Smokers. They're based out of Luling, Texas. It's Michael Johnson. He's doing an amazing job. He's been welding since he was a kid. His pits are gorgeous. His welds are awesome. He's just really good at what he does. When we first started this partnership, he was about 4 to 5 months. Now he's 12 to 14. So if you're interested in his pits, follow him at Centex_smokers. Give him a DM, get a quote. You're going to fall in love with what he does and then get inspired. Even if you aren't in the market for a pit, you'll get inspired by his work and his photos, and he takes some really cool stuff and really cool shots. Again, that's Centex Smokers out of Luling, Texas, and it's sponsored by Flores Tortillas. That's florestortillas.com or Flores Tortilla on all the social media. Michael Wyatt is putting together some of the best tortillas on the planet. They're made with smoked beef tallow. Every Monday at 10 a.m. They drop on his website for sale. Get them in dozens. Ship them anywhere in the United States. They are so good, you'll make someone so happy. Be good also, there's a number of barbecue joints across the United States that carry them either to use for their tacos or they sell them in a case. So I have a list below of those. Again, it's Flores Tortillas, so happy they're on board. And I have a website at kevinsbbqjoints.com. Links to all the podcasts and YouTube stuff. If you're enjoying these, please subscribe. That way you don't miss out. At the end, stay safe and have a good week. You said you grew up in West Texas. Where in West
Yeah,
Texas, and what was that like?
well, I was an Air Force brat, so I
Oh,
was
okay.
born in Amarillo, and when I was like a year old, we moved to England. My mom is English,
Oh,
and my dad is from West Texas. Was born in a farmhouse outside of a little town called Tokyo, Texas,
Tokyo.
and then we lived in Louisiana and Taiwan. Came back to San Antonio, where my dad finished his Air Force career, and then we moved back to Plains, Texas, in Yoakum County, which was like his hometown,
Yeah,
and that's where I went to high school and everything. So that's where I say I'm from.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
I claim to be. I don't know if they claim me, but I claim it.
Yeah. I think they have no choice. But
And as the saying goes, you can't sling a dead cat in planes without hitting somebody that I'm kin to. So
I I love Texas phrases. I love like little old old sayings. That's hilarious. We did.
get a couple of beers. I mean, you'll learn some new ones.
Oh, all right. Well, I look forward to that someday. You're on. So how long did you live in England?
We lived there for 4 years.
Were there years that you remember, or were you too young?
Yeah, I was probably, up until I was about 5, I think is when we moved back. So I have memories of it. Probably some of my earliest memories are there.
Do you go back ever?
Um, Yeah, I've go back several times. But in the late 70s, my aunt and her family, my mom's sister, they immigrated to the US. So in little bitty Plains, Texas, population 1,240, there were my cousins lived first down the street and then across the street from us, and they were English. But I took my kids for the first time year before last. We went and we took my mom.
Oh,
My mom didn't want to go, and she's like, I'm too old, I don't, like, trying to talk her into it. And if you want grandma to do something, you get the grandkids to
yeah, that
talk her
makes sense.
into it.
That's a smart
So
idea.
my son is like, it's like, come on, grandma, we really want you to go. And so she went. She had a blast. We put
I'm
her up in
sure.
first class, and we walked around her old neighborhood, and it was really
That's
cool for the
important.
kids. And
No, it's important
Um,
for the grandkids too to hear the stories or see
and see the old
through her eyes.
places. And
Yeah.
then one night we were staying in this like 17th century inn, with like a pub downstairs. And
Oh, I love that already.
um, one night we got all the cousins together because my all the people I remember growing up are gone. My great aunts and my grandfather and everything. But there's still a lot of my mom's cousins and second cousins, and we probably had like 30 or 40 of them get together in the beer garden at this pub,
Oh,
and it was so much fun.
that's so neat. That's special.
Just like it just reminds you of how many. It reminded me how similar my two cultures are, as far as hospitality and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Also, too, being a photographer and a photographer's mind, how was that when you shooting in? Because I haven't been to England before, but it's
Oh, it's fun. I mean,
the
in England is
buildings, the
just,
stone, the everything.
I'm from West Texas, which is a relatively new part of the world, right? Like
Yeah, comparatively.
white people
Yeah.
and Europeans didn't move there
Yeah.
until almost the turn of the century. Like I remember when I was a photojournalist working in Lubbock, photographing Lubbock's 75th anniversary. Well, in England, the house my cousins live in is like 350 years old, and you can't sling a dead cat without hitting a castle or something, and it's overwhelming how beautiful it is.
It's interesting. I want to go to Europe because even in California, I'm always on the search for old buildings here in Los Angeles, and
Oh yeah,
there's really not there are, but they're not
I
like you
think
would.
Dallas and LA are almost kindred spirits in
I
that
think
way.
so.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they just tear down everything and build new.
But I'm sure as you drive around Texas, there's times where you stop because you see something beautiful.
Oh, it's and there's and almost as many times things I see that I regret not stopping.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
was just down in Junction, Texas, which is just off of I-10, kind of north and west of San Antonio. I was helping teach a class. Texas Tech University is where I went to school,
Hmm.
and I'm on the National Advisory Board. They have a campus in Junction, and it's almost like a field research
Huh.
thing, But every year they call it an intersession between the spring session and the first summer session, they have like this 2 week really intense photography class. It's kind of like an outdoor
That's great.
photography class, and it's legendary. Like anybody that ever went to tech, and you ask them about if they were in photography or anything in media and communications,
Huh.
if they went, they'll be telling you about it. And I've been wanting to go for years, and it used to be taught by Wyman Menzer, who's a pretty famous photographer. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard of him. And he tried to get me to go down. And then now Jared Foster, who's a good friend, a great photographer, great guy, and a professor at Tech, he teaches it, and he was always like, come on down. And it was always a really busy time for me because I was like right at the middle end of May, and where every time I thought I was going to go, I'd get booked, and it's like, so, pandemic and everything, I'm like, I got nothing going. And he's like, come on down. So I spent a week down there. So much fun. We shot rattlesnakes and did fake, they don't get exposed to commercial photography a lot. So we kind of did a mock commercial shoot for this.
That's and because of you, because I want to get into that because that's the world that you have your foot's in that world a lot.
Yeah,
And
that's where I live. Yeah.
yeah, you don't live, but you're like not always, but your brain isn't always 100% there because I'm sure there's other things that you love to do.
Well, I
But now
started
what?
life as a photojournalist, and I kind of
Yeah.
feel like that's in my blood. Hopefully, that's reflected in my style a little bit.
Mhm,
That
for sure.
basic storytelling and looking at things. I always say, probably, I love what I do. I love my crew. I love my clients. I mean, it's really cool. People go, "Oh, it's such an exciting job." It is. It really is fun. It beats digging ditches, which I've done that too. But sometimes it's just a job. Some
Hmm.
days, not every day is, shooting a
Yeah.
safari in Africa or something. But
Have you shot a
it,
safari in Africa?
yeah, I did
Oh, that's so cool.
for a magazine shoot, and oh, it was so much fun. It
Oh,
was an exercise in sleep deprivation, but it was fun.
hey, but so what was your very first camera, and when did you know that this was a path that you wanted to go on?
My very first camera that I can recall, if as you can imagine, I've thought about this over the years. We lived in Taiwan, and I went to second and third grade there,
Okay.
and I ordered it off of Bazooka bubblegum wrapper.
Nice.
And it was just a little, it took like, I guess like 120 film or whatever. And that was my very first camera. And my
Uh,
dad was always not like super into it, but kind of a hobbyist. He had this
huh.
nice rangefinder camera he had gotten in Germany, and he took pictures. I have this great collection of slides from everywhere we went in the world,
Oh, that
and
is
that my dad
special.
took. But really, what got me more serious into it when I was in the 8th grade, going into high school, again, Plains, Texas, Yoakum County. My cousin, a little bit older than me, she was going to be a senior when I was going to be a freshman, and she was editor of the yearbook,
Ah.
or in our vernacular, the annual. We call it the annual, not the yearbook. But most people understand yearbook.
Yeah, if you said
And
annual, I would think it was something else. Yes,
a
that's sad.
doctor's exam or something, right? So I was always into kind of arts and crafts and stuff, always kind of doing stuff like that. And she was like, "Oh, he would be really good at that. He should be a photographer." And
Huh.
so she like made me a photographer. And the
Wow.
first day of high school, I learned how to use the camera, which was a Pentax spot K1. No, it was a Pentax Spotmatic with a screw-in lens. And the second day, I learned how to develop film, like develop a roll of
Yeah.
Tri-X, black and white film. And the third day, I learned how to make a print. And then, like the fourth or fifth day, the guy that taught me all that quit the yearbook staff.
Oh,
And so it was good though, because
it's
then
funny how all these little things
it forced me to have to
yeah,
go
made you.
seek out and learn. Like every teacher that cycled through during my high school years that had any experience in photography or had taken any classes in college, I would just glop onto them and try to learn. And
That's
and by the time I graduated, I thought I knew everything about photography.
no,
It's
I'm
funny
kidding. Yeah, you
how
figure out,
much more stupid I've become since then. But
likewise.
so I was going to be a photographer, but I thought I don't have to take photography in school or anything. I'm just going to major in business and blah 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 blah. Well, I think I got to my second year of school and business calc, and then that's when I switched over to photojournalist.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So I went from there, and I got a scholarship at this small school in Hobbs, New Mexico, and I worked at the school as a student photographer, shooting their PR stuff and everything. And then I got an internship at the newspaper in that town that summer. And then I went on to Texas Tech, and I worked at the University News and Publications Bureau there. And then we had a great student publications department. Our paper was independent. It was at the school in the journalism building, but we were independent from the school. So we could do whatever we wanted, which, was good and bad.
Yeah, good and bad, yeah.
But it was like a paid, I got paid for 20 hours a week. And it was, good real life experience. And then I went on to work at the newspaper at that town, and in Lubbock, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, and just moved on from newspapers to newspapers. And I got into the commercial world. I got a job at, my cousin worked at this printing company called Quad Graphics. It's like, now it might be the biggest printing company, but for a long time it was the second biggest printing company. They had a photo studio and shot a lot of commercial stuff, and they wanted somebody who could shoot people. And so I'm like, got an ego, so I like, sent them my portfolio, and they interviewed me a couple of times, and then they offered me a job, and I never even thought about it or anything. I was like, probably not real happy with my managing editor and whatever. And I was like, cool, I'll take it. And I mean, that's how much thought I gave it right there. And I was like, hey, I've got a vacation planned in Paris. Can I start like in 3 weeks? And they're like, sure.
Wow.
And so I like quit my job, went to Paris for 2 weeks. And
wait, quick aside, this was all film, right? You were shooting on film.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the smell of the developing fluid? Because I took
have
a class.
Dreams about it.
At San Diego State, I took like a little class and it was black and white photography. But I remember that smell. It's so visceral.
It's probably the rapid fix that you remember, that smell. But yeah.
Do you think that changed the way? Do you think it shaped the way you shoot now?
I
shooting
think
on film
so.
or helped
now I've been doing
form?
digital so long. It's like one of the exercises my buddy did at this class was made him shoot something in 36 frames.
Okay.
So they really had to think about it. And now, I mean, when I'm shooting fashion, we shoot 600 frames on one picture.
Isn't
You
that
know, I mean, it's crazy, you know, and you think about the differences. I mean, I can remember like being on a beach somewhere, shooting on the Hasselblad, shooting film, and you know, crew's there, models there, and you turn to the art director and you go, I think I got it. Let's
you
shoot
think?
one more roll. And that's the whole beauty of digital photography. People say all these things, you know, it's faster, it's cheaper, you know, whatever. All those things may be true, but they are all because of that immediate feedback.
Hmm.
You know, now I'm shooting, I'm
Are you shooting to a laptop now or something like that? Or
90% of the time I'm shooting tethered. Yeah.
is that what?
And
Okay,
you
that's what it's
know,
called. Okay, good.
the art director, creative director, client are all looking at the thing and they're like, okay, let's got it. Let's move on. You know, you have it. You can move on to the next shot. It makes you more productive. You know, a lot of the technical risks are gone. You know, like you always shot extra because like, what if this film gets ruined, this roll gets
Yeah,
ruined in the process and you got some on this other roll? Well, you know, you got a digital tech there and he's backing up
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like
like
you don't.
almost in real time. And like, I mean, I'm one of my customers, he's like backing up to multiple
Terabytes
hard drives
of.
because we're like handing them off to retouchers that might be on location with us to get stuff out, and then one might get FedEx to somebody else, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
amazing how far we've come. And the disappointing part of that versus like back in the film days is like sometimes I don't see the picture after I took it until
That's
months
true. Oh,
later
that is true.
because
That's a bizarre
it
thing.
goes into that pipeline
Yeah, exactly.
when
It's like
it's
it's not.
done. And so, you know, you feel like a lot of times you feel like I wanted some input on that, but you know, you just got to go with the workflow.
Wow, that sparked an interesting memory because I remember I had to do some stuff for the Academy Awards. This is way before COVID. I had to do some writing stuff, and there was a photographer who was taking the photos as the people won the award. They go to a room. There's all these. There's like a photograph, like a huge
Yeah.
stage where they're all the photographers, and then they go into an interview room and from all over the world. But I was just transcribing stuff. I wasn't anything too special. But I remember the girl bringing. She had an assistant who was bringing cards, and they were stacking the cards somewhere, and one of them got lost, and that was because it was they weren't.
Uh,
And I remember the panic, and she drank so much that night because she was so depressed, so sad. Like it was. I remember her had a number of
Card, I
whiskey.
mean, it all depends on the type of shoot you're doing, right? And everything, but cards, like especially in commercial photography and stuff, a card workflow is just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say who the client was because I'm sure everybody would recognize him, but I was on a shoot one time in where were we, Colorado, I think, and they had like a card workflow, and they the digital tech got overwhelmed and they
That's
lost
exactly what happened.
cards and
Or
or
mixed them up and then
overwritten or
yeah,
something.
over.
And
I think
I
that's what
was
happened.
new. This was my first shoot for them, and I was new to the workflow, so I was kind of like hedging my bet. Like, I know I'm really not supposed to do this, and I don't want to slow down the process, but I was like making my own backup copy before I handed out the cards
Smart.
because even though we weren't shooting tethered, we would have a laptop along and check stuff periodically, you know. And so, I mean, kind of my OCDness doing
That
that
saved it.
kind of like saved part of that shoot.
Can you explain that way to the workflow could make? Because what if someone's listening to this now and they're aspiring to do what's the workflow that you wouldn't recommend? Is it that because I think she was grabbing the cards and then they were stacking them on something or putting them into something that was foam
Yeah, I
or
mean,
something.
there's a million iterations, but you take the card out of the camera and hand it to somebody,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
runner or somebody, or maybe the digital tech is standing right there, and then they start loading it in to computers or backing it
But if
up
it's
and
happening too
everything.
quickly, there could be multiple ones that are stacked next to
Well,
each
and if
other.
we
Yeah,
had
that's
and we had two crews shooting too, so they were getting fed by two different.
oh,
And
oh, that's a double
so it's
recipe.
just when you're tethered, it's just smoother, and you can automate a lot more stuff. So you're shooting, it's popping up, the client's seeing it, and they're not having to interpret. something that's not quite the proper resolution at this
Yeah, they
size.
could zoom in on it and they could, yeah.
The digital techs, they're just masters at having automatic backups and backups of the backups, and it all happens with a lot of, I mean, there's always the human element keeping a check on everything, but there's a lot of automation that just like keeps it smooth. It adds cost and crew and everything. I mean, like on a location shoot like that, I mean, you got to think about, it not only adds the cost of that extra person and their gear, but the risk involved in insurance with that, lodging and food for that person. I mean, crew, they got to eat all the time and sleep inside. I don't know what the problem is.
I don't understand. That makes zero sense to me.
So that's the downside. But so I mean, different levels of production, and I shoot, we talk about this stuff, and I don't want to make it sound like that's my world every single day. I do shoots where it's just me and what I can carry on my back, and I do shoots with a crew of 30 people, 2 RVs and a 510 grip truck. It's just, it depends on what you're doing. But when you're spending that much money, what we do, I mean, I think we're hopefully compensated fairly, maybe sometimes not enough, but it's a lot of money. And so that little extra,
that's important,
adding that crew member, make sure that money doesn't go for naught. You want to, it's just one little extra assurance that, I mean, if they're paying me and a couple of models and a couple of stylists and hair and makeup and
that's a whole
and craft services and lodging for everybody, I mean, that meter starts running. I always try to, when I'm talking to students and everything and talking to new crew and everything, I always try to, impress upon them that, once we throw that lever of the machine and start taking pictures, it's just eating money, And so if stuff happens that halts production, slows us down or everything, that's why everybody gets excited. And, you hear those stories of people yelling at everybody. And, I try not to do that. I mean, I like to think, I like to think of my crew as my family and my clients as my friends, and I'd like to treat them that way. And I'm open to input, and I like everybody paying attention. And you got to know when to say something and when not to, right? You got to read the room, but I like I want more eyes on it. Don't I don't want my assistant to say in front of the client, well, that looks stupid, don't do that. But if he sees something, I want him at the very least to lean over and whisper in my ear and go, hey, is that collar supposed to be like that? Because you can miss things easily.
Like the Christmas tree.
Like the Christmas tree. There's a famous one with one of my biggest clients and dear friends that we shot. This company no longer exists, but she shot for this. She worked for this company, and they made special occasion dresses for little girls.
Okay.
Like, think about like Christine gowns and all kind of bright little ring bearer outfits and stuff like that. And we shot this beautiful shot one time, and a little tiny yellow A-clamp made it all the way through to the cover of the catalog. I mean, it went through shooting it, viewing it on the screen, editing it down to that shot, 3 rounds of color correction and making a hard proof, and it made it to press and was on the cover. And it's like, it's just mortifying,
But it's at that point, it's not entirely your fault already, but it's like it went down a trail. But I know, but it's still
another thing I preach to my crew is you got to take ownership of stuff, and it's like, I had a part in it, so it's like you got to own up.
Wow. How did you go from the photojournalist to what you're doing now, and what do you do now? Like, so that way people know, like, it's, and like, because I'm sure there's people,
I went to work for this company, Quad Graphics, and so I worked in the studio, and I really didn't know what to expect, and I ended up just kind of being, for a year or two, being like the corporate photographer.
Okay.
And I was a photojournalist. I shot 35 millimeter, a lot of black and white film, but during that time, I worked in the studio and had my desk was in the studio, so they didn't really keep me busy 100% of the time. So I would just jump in and help the guys in the studio, and that was kind of my
Okay.
assistantship. I learned from those guys how to use a 4x5 camera, lighting, and those guys taught me so much. Still talk to those guys and everything. They were just like
Wow.
awesome and sharing their knowledge and everything. And then one day, you know, everything got busy and they were like, "Hey dude, can you just build a set over here and start shooting this?" And so I was like up on top of a 12-foot ladder, a 4x5 camera. Because now you just send the camera up and you look at the computer screen, right? But then you had to be
Uh-huh.
behind the camera. And my boss walked in and was like, "What the hell is he doing up there? What is he doing?" And they were like, "Don't worry, we're watching him. He's got it covered and everything." And then I don't know, I just made the transition to that, and I worked for them for like 25 years.
Wow.
And
Oh, you did?
um,
Okay, I didn't know it was that long.
yeah, we had a network of studios, and when I left, we had about 17 studios around the country, and
So
I
would you
had the one in
travel? Would you
Dallas.
travel around to different places
To some
for?
of them, yeah, sometimes more than others. I kind of had a leadership role, so I was more involved with the other studios
Oh, okay.
maybe than normal. Like that's why I was in California all the time. We had one out in Anaheim, and that kind of fell under my purvey. So I was out there like 1 week a month or something. And,
And so brands would work
um,
with you guys? Is that what or like
yeah, yeah,
okay. Or
all kinds of things.
marketing firms and yeah.
Yeah, agencies, direct to client, and that's like right now. My mix is probably is heavier on the direct to client than with the agency mix, but I still work with a lot of agencies too.
And are you getting emails all the time? I guess too also our mutual friend was mentioning that like because of COVID, it was difficult. Like it was, and
Oh yeah,
I didn't think like people don't think about all the different things that are affected
my
by.
food, I shoot a lot of food and I shoot a lot of lifestyle people, a little bit of fashion, but a lot of lifestyle and stuff. And my food clients is what's kept me alive during the pandemic,
Okay.
because most of them have some sort of either catalog online or like ordering component to their business.
Mm-hmm.
So their sales went up
Yeah.
and they were doing great. The lifestyle and the fashion and stuff for me still hasn't come back yet. So like
Oh,
I'm in full marketing mode right now,
yeah.
trying to build
Yeah. Drum
lists
up.
and make relationships and email blasts and stuff like that.
Do you feel like that will come back because of the way things are going, or is it? Yeah, you'd hope so.
I sure
I
hope
hope so
so.
too. Yeah, yeah, I hope so
I'm
too.
sure. You know what? I don't think everything's going to come back exactly like it was. I think just like a lot of aspects of life,
Yeah, things are.
there's going to be some kind of hybrid, and it's disappointing because 2019 was probably my best year ever, and everything was going up. All my clients were adding work and everything, and then March 13th, everything just went. Never mind.
There's been a lot of people I've talked to that was their best year ever, and like it was, and the
Yeah.
growth potential was exponential. Like things were looking to.
Oh yeah, expanding, looking at doing more stuff, and I was actually in the middle of a shoot. We had spent 3 days prepping and building sets, like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then that's when that happened. I think that Friday was March 13th, or was it, or 12th or something.
Something around there. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, the client called me to cancel the shoot, and it was a week-long shoot.
Oh,
And I was like, man, I was just like, you know, devastated, not just because the work and the
yeah,
money and everything, but we spent all this prep. And I told the client, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to bill you for all this, and you're not getting any pictures. I
yeah.
I feel terrible. And they understood and
Yeah,
everything,
but
but
it's just
and
it's.
then it was like zero work for 2 or 3 months, and then a little bit.
Were you
We were able to
doing?
make up that shoot.
Were you wandering and taking photo? Like
I was, I was.
mentally how do you deal with that?
Oh, I don't. Sometimes I wonder if I did.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wonder too myself, but I
But
just
yeah, I think probably like many people suffered some level of depression or
yeah,
anxiety or whatever you call it,
for sure.
involved with that. And because yeah, I'm used to, I'm on the road out of town 20, 25 weeks a year. I haven't been on a plane in a year and a half.
Wow. Same with me.
Yeah.
That's
So, I mean, that was hard. But I mean, the cool thing is I've been working on, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do something marketing wise with it or not, but I've been dumping everything into a folder that's just like stuff I shot during the pandemic
mhm.
and just different test shoots and self assigned things that I did. And that was, if there was a bright spot, that probably was it because I got to do some cool stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
I went down to Austin, I connected online with this fly fishing guide, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'd love to photograph you sometime. He was into it. So we went down
Oh,
and we
that's
got some
great.
great stuff. And just people I met locally did this if they were interesting. You know, we didn't always get great shots, but it was like I kind of like started it as like a passion. I
Mhm.
called it my passion project, shooting people who are passionate about what they do,
That's great. No, I
you
love
know,
that.
and you know, hanging out with some of my barbecue friends, you know, went down to Miller's a couple of times and or several times and went to Todd and Misty over at Cadillac a couple of times during the pandemic. They were handing out meat to people. If you feel like you have a need and everything, because if you remember early on, food
Yeah.
distribution was,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
were handing out like 5-pound bags of Wagyu ground beef to people.
Oh,
So I went and photographed that and hung out with them. And
and those
um,
are important slices of life that you were able to capture.
yeah, well, I mean, you know, I don't know if I ever showed
No,
anybody,
I know,
but
but
it
for
just, you
yourself,
know,
even just
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's also, you know, tying back to the barbecue thing, it's also a
it shows.
cool manifestation of what the barbecue community is like.
Definitely.
I mean, these people are so nice and cool. The Miller family,
Yeah, talk about the Miller family a
like,
little bit because a lot of people, you know, what's funny is I feel like even though people know about them and they made every list, it seems like they're still like the dark horse. Like people don't seem to talk about
wonder
them
if
as
that's a
much. It's
good
weird.
thing.
Maybe it's a good thing, yeah, for
All
you.
those people won't come ruin it.
I know,
But
but
they
it's
are
but they
just
are doing so
awesome
much.
people. I mean, there's stories that aren't mine to tell about them. They're so generous
Yeah.
and good people. And I just happened. I mean, my producer and I went and ate there not long after they opened, like in 2008 in their old building,
Oh wow.
and just kind of like kept a relationship with them. They're just the nicest people. And
Definitely.
Dirk and Dusty and Dylan and Mama Lisa, you know, she's like always making me fatter with all her great pies and stuff. And but they are great people
And
and
creative and
oh, they're creative and smart.
passionate.
I
Yeah,
mean,
just
Dusty is just like
savvy and yeah.
just the greatest people. And they you know what, they don't like sit back on their laurels. They're always improving. And this new like genre of craft barbecue or whatever, I think that's what it takes
Mm-hmm.
to be successful. I mean, they're all like Dirk's always improving. You know, like I was up there one time. He's like, "Here, I want you to try the ribs. I've changed some stuff." You know, it's really good.
That's really
I got
neat.
a great
That's
story about them. So this was literally maybe a week or two before the pandemic. A good friend of mine, like one of my best friends, I have introduced him to Miller's, obviously, and he just like wild about it. And he's in the aviation industry, and he had some clients coming down from Iowa, and they had meetings in Dallas, and then they were going to like a convention in Austin,
okay.
and they were going to drive, and they were going to stop at Miller's on the way. And I was slow and bored, and I was like, I'm going to come with y'all, go to Miller's, and just eat some barbecue and come home. Y'all go on to Austin. So we go down, and there's all these guys from Iowa, and you know, Miller's is just awesome. And, you know, the whole time we were there, Chapa, the restaurant manager, and Amadio Chapa and Dirk were sitting with us. We're there like 2 or 3 hours, you know. And and I was talking to Dirk, and I was like, you know, Dirk, I was thinking about getting a pellet smoker. He's like, hmm. And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm getting too old. I was like, if we want to eat a brisket for supper, I got to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know you do it every day, but you know, da da da. And he was so agreeable, and it just shocked me. And I was like, so yeah, I'm thinking about getting a trailer or something. And he goes, you know, I don't see nothing wrong with that. If you want to get one of those and do it, and if when you're out there cooking on it, you know, if you want to wear one of your wife's dresses, you go right ahead. And the Iowa boys, they just
Uh,
lost it. You know, it
oh,
was just
that's so
like
funny.
he just set me up to be the straight man, and just like
you're,
boom,
you're like,
it
wow,
was
it is a
awesome.
good idea. Oh, that's so amazing. That's so great. Well, let's talk about, I guess, because some people listening to this are listening for photography, but for barbecue, how long have you been shooting barbecue? Because you've lived there, so that's sort of in your blood, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up with it and everything, right? But I probably, I don't know, my old producer who's retired now and good friend Brian Gooding and we'd be driving all over Texas for shoots and everything, and he kind of like got me into. We started like, and this is still to this day, if we have a shoot in Texas, our route is determined by barbecue joints.
That's great.
So we'd be going down to the shoot at the King Ranch, which is like an 8-hour drive, but we turned it into a 12-hour drive because we'd go all the way to Junction or to like Fargo's and College and Bryan or something, and you know,
That's
hit 4
great.
or 5 barbecue joints in one day. And it just started to become a thing, and really didn't start out to photograph it. We were just tasting
Just to,
barbecue.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And like I had mentioned in that other article you had, is like, usually the primary thing is just to go eat some good barbecue, and the
Exactly.
photography is
Mhm.
almost secondary. But you just had so many nice people and just interesting settings and backgrounds and
Yeah,
people, and how could you
it
not
lends itself.
photograph it?
It's I feel like
It's
it's like
like the photographer Joe McNally. He talks about some editor in his history telling him, if you want to shoot better pictures, stand in front of more interesting things.
that's kind of
And it's like, you know but it is cool, and the whole culture behind it is just fascinating. As a native Texan, and
hmm
and a proud Texan, and probably an obnoxious Texan, all that stuff really matters to me a
hmm
lot. But the culture and the people, I mean, it's like, especially now with this, you know what's been going on, like the last 10 or 12
hmm
years. Yeah, I mean, you can go. I've had decent Texas barbecue in Manhattan.
hmm
I mean,
In
and
California, you
they
could have it in
know
Portland,
people
and
I
yeah,
know. I'm
uh-huh,
talking to them. They're like, "You're from Texas?" Yeah.
uh-huh,
Well, we modeled everything after Cripes and Lockhart. It's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, Roy, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like
Well, and a lot of the people have been to Texas A&M. Everything's kind of, yeah.
everybody knows everybody, and like the which I've never gotten to go to. I got to go, but like the Texas Monthly Barbecue Fest, and then like the big one in Tyler. They all know each
A
other
red
because
dirt
they
and
get to hang out together,
uh-huh,
and they help each other and support
yeah,
each. It's amazing.
yeah. It's like 99.9% of the people are really kind. They're really nice. There's a couple
Yeah,
that are
and then
crazy.
there's even like you know John Mueller, who's like the David Allen Cole of barbecue, but I kind of think that's a front. He's really a good guy.
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little bit about your gear. What?
Well, I shoot mainly with Nikon gear nowadays. I've always been
Yeah.
a Nikon guy, going back to the first new camera I bought was a Pentax K1000. But after that, when I went to college, and the first camera I saved up to buy was a Nikon FM, I think,
Okay.
with an MD12 motor drive. And I still shoot Nikon. Over the years, I've shot Hasselblad, and then it transitioned into digital. We would shoot Hasselblad with a phase one back. And I think those products are still great. They're still really good, but the DSLRs have gotten so much better that the need, the for a lot of the stuff I shoot, the cost benefit ratio isn't always there. And I don't want to disparage anybody's product, but a Canon or a Nikon is just much more reliable than a phase one camera, or those big beautiful cameras are also very complicated, and sometimes the uptime can be a factor.
No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense because I think people
and
probably
um
dream of having those,
and
but
now I have, like I have these mirrorless cameras. This is a Z7. I call it my Barbie camera because, I mean, look, it's even got like a little extender on it, but look how tiny it is. But I mean, the files it makes are beautiful. But I do, like, I've said before, I kind of downplay the equipment. It's like,
Yeah,
hopefully
exactly.
it's the person behind the camera that's
You would hope
making the
so.
picture and not
Hmm.
the. And I don't know if you shoot Canon, but I make fun of Canons all the time. But they make a really good product.
I do shoot
It's
Canon, but I
it's
won't tell.
more like it's like a Ford Chevy thing, right? It's
Uh-huh.
like we just like to make fun of each other, and like a lot of my crew and everything, they're like all Canon people, and I
That's
always
funny.
joke, and I like, oh, Canons give me a rash, and
What
but I
about,
shoot
but there's
Canon,
also
so I have,
Sony. Aren't there Sony people then? There's like a whole Sony group too, right?
yeah,
They're
yeah,
like fanatical about it, I think.
yeah, they are. But you know what? Sony's making a good product, and some of the new technology they're coming out with. I mean,
That's hard to,
they
yeah.
kind of led the pack on mirrorless. I
Hmm.
was like an anti mirrorless guy. Like, there's no way I'm going to shoot with an electronic viewfinder. And a few years ago, I was on location for Cabela's in North or South Dakota, and one of my assistants had like a Sony A7 or A9, or I can't remember what it was. And I was like, let me see that, because I had another good friend that shot Fuji and just loved it.
Hmm.
And so I started playing with it. I'm like, well, maybe I could use one of these, And then as the technology got better, and I ordered one and started using it, and just some of the stuff like the eye follow focus, and I'm like, I actually bought a second one because when I was shooting fashion, it was taking too long to switch lenses. So it's like I have a short lens and
Yeah,
a
just
long
put it,
lens, and
yeah,
just
that.
switch camera. Especially when you're tethered and
Hmm.
you have a tether block on there and a plate for the. One of my lights just went out.
That's okay. We're wrapping up.
Yeah. Well, these are portable lights. They're battery powered, so they turn off the modeling lights after a while.
Yeah, mine's probably gonna
Um,
go out eventually. It's
um, but I use like all Godox lighting equipment for 25 years. I used nothing but Broncolor, which
okay.
is like the creme de la creme, precision made Swiss stuff. And but the what happened was I had like packs that were 17 years old still going like crazy, but they didn't have any modern features on them.
Uh
Now you got the transmitter on the camera, and I can adjust everything right there, and high speed sync. And these things are kind of disposable. It's
yeah.
like, and you don't feel bad. Like if I put a light on a stand out in the middle of a lake somewhere,
Yeah, and something.
I'm not going to feel as bad as if it's a brown color or a pro photo falling over and costing me $3,000.
No, yeah, definitely.
And but I love them, and I really like these. I used to use like pro photo B1s a lot on location. We'd rent them wherever we go, and these kind of outperform them. They got a little bit more power. There's you always got to consider the source, right? So nothing is gospel, but there's studies that their color performance and their output consistency is on a par, and it costs a quarter of what that stuff. And
Is
I mean, the batteries last forever.
is there a certain one that you like or that you
Well, I use the 8600s.
okay.
It's AD, not the number
Yeah,
80.
yeah.
Um, but I have in the studio, I have a lot of their studio model lights too. And when I went off on my own, I swore I would never have a big kit again. I would just have a small kit and rent what I needed. Well, Kevin, I got 30 light.
Of course.
It's crazy, but I love them, and I'm like, I should be an ambassador or something. I've sold more of these things you know than anybody, because I like
Yeah, you should be
always recommended them.
a sales rep or some kind
I
of,
should get a commission or
yeah,
something,
five, ten
but
percent. There should
I
be
love
something
them.
built in. Yeah.
But yeah, and I use like plugging people I love, I guess. Like I have Think Tank bags. I really like Think Tank, and Mindshift Gear is kind of like their outdoor backpack
Yeah, because
division.
okay, I'm actually looking for a bag. Okay, so think tank. Okay.
Okay, Mindshift Gear. What's it called?
Thank you. No, this is helpful for self.
26. I use a 26-liter
Okay.
Backlight, I think it's called. But if you want a smaller one, there's an 18-liter one too, and I think there's even a bigger one. I can't have the bigger one because I'll fill it up and it'll weigh 90 pounds. So the 26 liter one's pretty good.
Okay.
Sometimes it weighs 45 pounds when I get it full. But yeah, and Matthews and American grip equipment and stuff. So pretty standard stuff.
Is there a certain, is that a tripod name? What's the tripod that you would, is there, because I know that some people say there's some that are kind of junky or kind of fall apart.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gitzo is like the pinnacle, right? I have a Gitzo monopod. I don't know that I have a Gitzo tripod anymore. Right now, I'm using for tripods. I have a couple of Benros, and then I have a little Bogan Manfrotto that I just love. I use the heck out of that thing, and it's not giant, but as the cameras get smaller, you don't need as big.
True.
And it's one of those things where I kind of bought it from an assistant. She kind of needed the money and she was selling it, and I really didn't need it, but I was like, here, I'll buy it from you. Now it's my favorite tripod.
That's good to know, because some lenses are pretty heavy, so you want to make sure you have a tripod that that doesn't, you don't want to drop anything. Yeah.
But I had, when I was doing that junction class, I had 500 on it.
Oh,
it was fine. Yeah,
excellent.
2 to 500 zoom.
Wow.
Which is kind of big.
And like I said, we could talk forever, and we'll do a part 2 for sure, because I'd love to just talk stories. But what are all the different ways people can get a hold of you?
Okay, my Instagram is at RJ Hinkle. My website is rjhinkle.com, and that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. You go to my website, and it's got all my stuff on there. So
yeah, and then contact information now is the best way to contact you through the website. Is that probably, if someone wants to?
Probably, but if you go to my website, it's got my phone number, my email address, and everything on there.
Okay.
RJ at rjhinkle.com. Wow. Hopefully it's all easy to remember.
That sounds, yeah. If not, it'll also be below, so people can get that too. But thank you so much for taking the time. I've wanted to talk to you for a while, and I've loved your stuff from afar, and I just like talking. I like talking Texas and talking.
I do too. I love, you get me talking gear and barbecue, and I'm never gonna shut up. And but yeah, I love your videos, and
thank you.
And it just, again, a testament to the barbecue community that there's such cool people out there.
Definitely. And I love all your photos, but that one of Arnis it's such a,
that is
such a great,
I said on that article, that was a kit lens. It was literally like I was in Lubbock for the advisory board meetings, which are only really a day and a half, but I a lot of times I'll go for the whole week and talk to some classes and stuff like that. And we had one day where we had a couple hours free for lunch, and it's like, let's go get some barbecue. So we got to Wolfrith and we go eat. And then my buddy Jared, just kind of giving me a hard time as we're getting our food. He goes up there and he goes, this is RJ Hinkle's famous barbecue photographer.
You're like, great.
And they're like, oh man, and they were so nice. And I was just like, and so like Arnis took me over there to where he made his shop next door, where he makes all the pits and everything. And he had just been welding, and he just looked perfect. Like, dude, can I take a picture real quick? And we call it pole barn lighting. It's just a big opening in the barn that's the light for that, and like a 70 to 120 f4 kit lens. It's what I had on me.
It says so much. It just says so much in that photo. I'll try to pop it.
Mallory loves the shot, but she hates that he's got the cigar in his
cigar. Yeah, it's like it just looks. It's just such a.
She's like, can you do that again without the cigar in his mouth?
It's almost like they're
such great people.
Yeah. They're the nicest. I could say they're the nicest for about 50 or 60 or 100 people, but are so great. They're so
Arnis and Mallory, the Miller family, Todd and Misty. I mean, Gary and Miss Tits. I mean,
I was just gonna say it's
Wayne and everybody. La Barbecue. I mean, it just
there's a lot of great humans, and it's different. It's like people always, and I've mentioned this on the show many times, they say, why are you so into barbecue? You're like, you're gonna die because you're having so much meat. And I'm like, number one, I don't eat as much as you think I eat, and number two, it's the people. Like talking to you. Like, I would never, if I wasn't in this world, there's maybe a chance I would have met you, but the fact that I have,
right.
I could sit down with you and then we
The
could
history and the
break bread
culture. And
when
like
we,
I said, it's universal. Having this background is like an icebreaker. People are like, "Are you sitting in a bar?" And I'm like, "No, it's a barbecue joint in Taylor,
yeah.
Texas." And I mean, it really is. The people are so cool, and just the history of the meat markets going back into
Yeah, how
the
it
Czech and
evolved.
German
Yeah.
immigrants, but even like the Caddos and stuff were smoking meat. The
Hmm.
Caddo Indians and everything were smoking meat long before
Right.
that. You know, it's and the traditions that came out of Mexico, and I mean,
Well,
it's
I
really
and Texas,
fascinating.
my heart, there's a large part of my heart that's in Texas, but also I like the stories from the South and the stories from like all the different the barbecue traditions from the
Yeah,
South. That's there's a lot of special things, and it's amazing how that evolved and and it's yeah
yeah.
that it's fascinating. There's a million things we could talk about, but RJ, thank you so much
You
for
bet. My pleasure. It's an
taking time.
honor to be with in such auspicious company. Well, looking at all the other
Well,
interviews you've
I
done.
think
So
you belong there for sure, and it's I just
I don't know
I'm
about that, but I'll take it for sure.
Alexa. Well, have a great day.
All right.
Don't have any optical illusions get you in
Yeah.
the next week or
No.
two. Have a great day.
All right. You
Thanks so much.
too.
Bye.